What are you doing?
I'm testing.
You've been testing for 2 years! Most people assume that if you never got a piercing, you simply never wanted one. But psychology tells a different story. Some people wanted it and still never went through with it. And by the end of this video, you'll understand what that says about you, more than any piercing ever could. This isn't really about jewelry. It's about that moment right before a decision, and why some people always pause at that exact point, about identities that almost became real, and about a question many people never say out loud. What would have changed if I'd said yes back then?
Okay.
That one landed.
Chapter 1. The person who's still waiting for the right moment. Let's start with the type most people recognize immediately, because they are that type. He's got favorites saved, dozens of them. He knows exactly what style he wants, which studio he'd go to, and which metal his skin can handle. He's done all the research. He's just waiting for the right moment.
The right moment for what feels like 3 semesters now.
Exactly. And here's where it gets psychologically interesting. Because this person isn't suffering from indecision. They're suffering from something researchers call anticipatory avoidance. The brain builds an internal image of what the piercing could look like and how it would feel. And the more detailed that image becomes, the more the brain has to lose. Because as long as the decision hasn't been made, the image stays perfect. The real piercing might not be.
So I'm protecting my imaginary piercing?
You're protecting your ideal self-image. That's not the same thing. But here's the part almost nobody expects. This avoidance isn't always a mistake. Sometimes it's a signal, because someone who has planned for years and never booked the appointment may have already found their answer. They just haven't let themselves hear it yet.
That might be true.
Chapter 2. The person who almost said yes and is glad they didn't. But now comes a type most people completely misread, and who most often misunderstands themselves. This person was genuinely close. Appointment made, studio chosen, and then, at the very last moment, they left. Not because of the pain, not because of the cost, but because something inside them resisted. A feeling they couldn't name.
Cold feet?
More precisely, a somatic warning signal. Our body keeps a kind of silent record of our decisions. When we're about to do something that doesn't align with our inner self-image, it sends a signal, not an alarm, not panic, more like a quiet, "This doesn't belong to me."
I always thought that was just fear.
People who listen to that signal show, according to research, an above-average level of interoceptive awareness, the ability to read internal body signals as real information, not as weakness.
So, walking out was actually the smart move?
Only if you understand why you walked out. Chapter 3. The rebel who censored themselves. And now it gets uncomfortable, because this type carries something they rarely talk about. There are people who, as teenagers or young adults, strongly identify with piercings, who wanted them, who planned them, and who then, under outside pressure, said no.
Parents?
Parents. School, the first job, the fear of being seen differently suddenly. Psychology calls this identity suppression, holding back a form of self-expression that's perceived as socially risky. And what's insidious about it? It doesn't leave a loud scar, just a quiet, persistent question.
What kind of question?
Who would I be today if I'd said yes back then? These people don't have a piercing, but many carry that decision against it for years. Not as pain, but as an open chapter. And open chapters don't just close on their own.
That sounds like a question you eventually have to answer.
Or you consciously choose to leave it open. That's an answer too. Chapter 4. The person who loves piercings and never wanted one. But now comes the type nobody understands. Not even themselves. This person genuinely finds piercings fascinating. They admire the courage behind them, the aesthetic, the statement. They follow piercing artists on social media, and yet they've never seriously considered getting one themselves.
That makes no sense.
Researchers call this vicarious identity expression, experiencing an identity through others without having to embody it yourself. And that can be a very conscious, very healthy form of self-definition.
Or a very unconscious one.
Exactly. The difference comes down to one question. Do I admire this or do I miss it?
I need a second.
Chapter 5. The person whose body is their last unwritten chapter. And then there's a type almost nobody talks about because they barely understand themselves. In a world where almost everything is visible, documented, and permanent, for some people, their own body is the last thing that hasn't been defined yet. The last thing that's still open.
The last thing that still belongs to me?
Exactly that. Psychological ownership, the feeling of genuine control over something, is a deep human need. And for some people, an unmarked body isn't emptiness. It's a promise to themselves. Not the freedom to avoid deciding, but the freedom to decide. Anytime, for anything, with no undo button.
That sounds less like procrastination and more like a deliberate choice.
For some people, it's both. And the difference between the two is one of the most honest questions you can ask yourself.
Chapter 6. What your unmarked body is really telling you. And now, after seeing all 5 types, comes the real question. What does it actually say about a person that they never got a piercing?
That they overthink everything?
Sometimes, but most of the time, it says something far more precise. People who never got a piercing, regardless of the reason, often share one common psychological trait: a high body autonomy sensitivity. That means they experience their body as something that fundamentally belongs to them and respond to any intervention, even a small one, with a strong internal review process. That's not fear. That's not a lack of courage. It's a deeply rooted awareness that the body isn't just a surface. It's a statement.
Is that good or bad?
It's both. It protects against decisions you'd regret, but it can also cause you to keep putting off decisions you actually want to make. The difference isn't in the unmarked body. It's in the question behind it. Are you still waiting? Or have you already decided?
I think I know. I just wasn't ready to say it out loud.
An unmarked body isn't a statement about courage or cowardice. It's a statement about self-knowledge or the path toward it.
I'm calling it from now on somatic autonomy optimization.
Call it whatever you want, as long as you know why. Which type are you? The eternal imaginer, the almost yes, the suppressed rebel, the admirer without action, or the guardian of the last blank page? Write it in the comments.